So here's what you'll need to assemble your keyguard. First, you'll need the two halves that you printed. You'll need something to protect your work surface. Then the adhesive you're using, and I really prefer to use epoxy. You have to mix those together. You'll need something to mix with and something to mix on. Use a little bit of sandpaper to sand these surfaces just so they won't be quite as slick and smooth. Very lightly. I'm using about a 60 grit paper. Not a lot. I'm not trying to sand a whole lot of plastic off, just to create a rougher surface for the epoxy to hold to. Something to wipe those surfaces off with so you're not picking up a lot of the plastic dust, which will prevent the epoxy from holding as well as it could. And lastly, I'm using just books in this case because epoxy likes to be clamped. So I'm just going to push these books against the keyguard from the edge once I've got the epoxy in place. So with all those things ready to go, I'll begin by preparing the epoxy. Looks like this is the hardener. Don't need a lot. And the resin. Nice to have that paper towel on hand just to wipe your hands with. And it'll catch any ooze left over if you put a little bit too much epoxy in the space between the two halves of the keyguard. Mix it well. This is a 5-minute set epoxy, which still gives me plenty of time. Scoop up a little bit. Put it on the edge, spread it. You only need to apply it to one side. If you're lucky and your keyguard basically has a solid line all the way through it, then you'll have a nice large surface area for which the epoxy is applied. We'll put the two pieces together, align them as best we can. Now's a good time to wipe off any extra, kind of squeeze them together, wipe off any extra adhesive so that it's not sticking out when the keyguard is completed. And align it really as close as you can to where the two pieces should be coming together. If it sticks out one way or the other, well, then it may not fit as well in the case opening, or it may not fit as well on the tablet if you're not using a case. And last, we'll just push these two books against each other on the outer edges of the keyguard to provide something of a clamping force. It's not like real clamping, but it's better than nothing. And that's it. We'll let that sit for at least 5 minutes, but this particular epoxy prefers to cure overnight. So we'll take a look at this again in about 24 hours. Well, it's a new day. Not quite 24 hours, but who's counting? So let's move our clamps out of the way. Take a look at our keyguard. Clearly the epoxy stuck to it. Well, I should say the paper stuck to the epoxy. Take that off. Not too bad. Scrape that off. Yeah, we'll do a better job later. And looks pretty solid. My guess is if you really torque this it would break in half right at this line. But let's not really torque it. And let's see what would happen if I just did a simple drop test on it. So move some of this stuff out of the way. And I'm going to drop it onto this surface from, I don't know, about 5 feet. See what happens. Didn't mean to kick the... Let's get back in focus. There we go. Okay. Still in one piece. Let's try again. Still in one piece. I see a little potential separation here. But for the most part, it'll be spending its time against a solid surface, the tablet. And there really aren't that many opportunities to torque it when it's on that surface. Maybe when you take it up, if you lifted it from both sides or carefully lifted it off, it's only the Velcro holding it in place. And you can drop it from a fairly high height onto a relatively hard surface and still holding up pretty well. Worst case, you glue it again.